Hey there, I'm Ashley Tison, your OZ Sherpa, guiding you to the Feel Good Tax Savings Summit through the Opportunity Zone program. Welcome to this game-changing tutorial brought to you by my full-service advisory team at OZPros. Stay tuned, this video will be your compass to the tax savings promised land. Over the course of our OZ outfitting at OZPros, we've had over 3,500 strategy calls, diving deep into the nuances of opportunity zones. We've successfully set up over 900 OZ entities, and during our 2+ years of OZ Weekly Ascent, we've spent countless hours ensuring our investors like you stay on the right path. Our community's impact is undeniable, helping defer over $1 billion of capital gains into impact investments since our inception. Today, I'll introduce the streamlined process of creating your own Qualified Opportunity Fund and Qualified Opportunity Zone business. We've tried to simplify the process as much as possible, making it accessible for everyone to take the reins of their own tax savings future. You'll learn about QOFs and the importance of QOZBs and how you can create them as simple, limited liability companies. We'll navigate you through selecting your filing state and the importance of understanding tax implications associated with that filing state. Plus, you'll discover the power of additional tools like the 31-month business plan and compliance checklist, ensuring you're not just compliant, but thriving. But that's not all. Stick around until the end, and I'm going to reveal a secret that's been pivotal in the success of our top investors. This isn't just another tutorial. It's your first step towards mastering opportunity zones and doing well by doing good. If you follow my lead while navigating the OZ program, you're not just investing, but transforming communities and securing your financial future with peace of mind every step of the way. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Let's get started. All right, so this is your Opportunity Zone cheat sheet, and you're going to see this coming time and time again. If you want it, you can actually go to OZPros.com and you can download this, and you can have your own version of this OZ cheat sheet. And so I'm going to show you through this Opportunity Zone cheat sheet exactly how and why you should be choosing which entity that you're going to do, how you're going to move your money back and forth, and ultimately how you're going to get your fund established. So first thing that you got to do is that you've got to choose between a QOF, QOZB, or both, right? And so more often than not, you're going to want this double stacked program where you have both a QOF and a QOZB. And the reason why is this. At the QOF level, you've got a 90% asset test where the QOF has to invest 90% of its funds into Qualified Opportunity Zone business property. Now, it can do that directly. And so if you've got a simple deal, and we've done this before where we set up just a QOF, in the event that you're able to buy something complete, where you're buying something that's finished, and then you're able to step into that and immediately cash flow it. And you can buy that directly from your QOF. But if you need to develop it, if you have this, like some kind of operations, you're more than likely going to want to own that through a QOZB, a Qualified Opportunity Zone business. And the reason why is this, because instead of this 90% test, you've got a 70% test of tangible property owned or leased as Qualified Opportunity Zone business property. That definition is over here, and we'll get into that, or we've got videos that show exactly what Qualified Opportunity Zone business property is. And so if you want to dive deep into those requirements, you can click on that video, and it'll take you to exactly what you need to do in order to have Qualified Opportunity Zone business property. But in the distinction is at the QOF level, 90% of it has to be that. At the QOZB level, it's only 70%, and it's of tangible property. And so that's the crucial difference, and the reason why we almost always show you to have a QOF and a QOZB. Now, this is also significant because when you set up a Qualified Opportunity Zone business and you move your money into your Qualified Opportunity Fund, as soon as you move the money down to the QOZB, as soon as you put that cash into it, you've qualified and you've hit your 90% asset test. Now, it needs to be original issue stock or partnership interest that you acquire from the QOF into the QOZB. So it needs to be an offering that the QOZB does to the QOF, and then it needs to be original cash. So you can't basically buy membership interest from somebody else. But when you put that money down into the QOZB, now, because it's a QOZB, you get a 31-month working capital safe harbor to protect that cash and to get it to where it is not subject to this 5% non-qualified financial property test. That's a big deal because it allows you flexibility so that this 70% test is basically turned off while you are in the middle of this 31-month working capital safe harbor. So we know that you probably want a QOF and a QOZB. Now let's go into what you're going to have to do. What entity structure do you want? Do you want to have a limited liability company? Do you want a corporation? Do you want an S Corp? And typically at the QOF level, or do you want a C Corp? Typically at the QOF level, we see that almost literally 99.9% of these are LLCs taxed as a partnership. And that qualifies as a qualified opportunity fund. So it's real easy. All you have to do is set up your QOF as a LLC taxed as a partnership. So what you do is you go to your Secretary of State, you create your LLC. Now, in the regs, it says that you should specifically file it, and in its articles of organization or in its organizing documents, it needs to be set up as an entity that 90% of it's specifically formed for the purpose of investing into qualified opportunity zone property. So when we do these, we actually attach an addendum when we file them with the Secretary of State, just for belt and suspenders sakes, right? So I'm actually going to go down to this this documentation requirements kind of version of the cheat sheet, because you can see that with your QOF, you're going to want to file your articles of organization with Tax Cut and Jobs Act language in it, if possible, if your state will allow you to do that. So, and then you're also going to want to, inside of the operating agreement for that QOF entity, contain Tax Cut and Jobs Act language that says that it's specifically set up for investing into opportunity zone property. When we set these up, we use a QOF compliance resolution as well as a belt and suspenders to fully make sure that we are up the safe harbor relative to making this a partnership or corporation formed for the purpose of investing in qualified opportunity zone property in our organizing documents. And then finally, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get an EIN showing taxation as a partnership. Now, if you are thinking about, okay, well, what if I don't necessarily want an LLC? What about a C corporation? And so in attorney world, we use triangles to represent something that's flow through. And I'm going to point out why that's significant, because we use a box to represent a C Corp. And the reason why we use a box is because the cash, the income, and losses, and etc., just goes straight up into that corporation. So if this was a C Corp, as your QOF, it's okay to have a C Corp for there, but the issue is that all of your profits are going to be caught at the C Corp level. Now, you can use your depreciation, you can use losses and that kind of thing to offset those profits at the C Corp level, but any distribution that you make is going to be subject to taxation. And, oh, hey, by the way, you're going to pay corporate taxes. So you're going to pay 21% as of now, corporate tax rate. And then when you make a distribution, you're going to pay a dividend tax on that dividend. It's called double taxation. That's one of the challenges behind a C corporation. And it's really tough when you have this as your QOF. And so this is the reason why I say that 99.9% do not use a C Corp as their QOF. Now, literally, I've had one that we've set up where we used a C Corp. And the reason why we did that was because they were making what's called private investments in public equity. And so they were making investments into other QOZBs, and then they were anticipating that that was going to generate a substantial return up to the QOF. And they were planning on reinvesting every single cent of the gain that came back off of that was going to go back down into another deal until they hit the 10-year hold. And then they were going to sell this C Corp. And then at that point in time, their investors would get the step up in basis to fair market value, and it could be okay. And because they were a C Corp, they didn't have depreciation and losses that they wanted to flow through to their investors. All they were looking to do was to invest into these companies that were going to ultimately become public or were already public. And so they were not concerned about trying to pass that through to their investors. So that's the one time where we have seen a C Corp be chosen as the qualified opportunity fund. And the reason why is this, is that you typically don't ever want to hold an appreciating asset in a corporation. And that's either a C corporation or an S corporation. And the reason why is that you don't get to take depreciation along the way, and you're capped. It's locked and loaded inside of that corporation. And then typically when you exit it, you get hit with that double taxation. And so if you were to try to pull money out of that C Corp prior to the 10 years, or to do so without exiting it to where you could take the step up in basis to fair market value, that's going to be a bad scene because you're going to basically end up paying dividend tax on it. So most of the ones that we have are LLCs taxed as partnerships. It's a fairly easy choice. People all the time will come to me and say, hey, listen, I want to do an S corporation. And so I walk them through that S corporations are tricky as well. And the reason why is this: if we put this as an S corporation, and we actually use a triangle to represent those as well, if this is an S corp, there's a question about whether an S corp can actually own a partnership or not, or if it needs to own another S corporation as a Q sub, as a qualified subsidiary of that S corporation. And so if that's the case, it raises the question about whether or not the LLC at the QOF level, or the S Corp in this case, has obtained a interest in stock or partnership issue at original issue for cash, and whether or not this is a disregarded entity as a Q sub, or whether it is actually a corporation. And so that's one of the reasons why we typically steer away from S Corps as well, is because there's not well settled confirmation in the industry about whether or not it's going to be recognized. So typically what we do is we recommend an LLC taxed as a partnership for your qualified opportunity fund. Now, let's go into selection for your qualified opportunity zone business. Same analysis goes on. Is it typically it's going to be an LLC taxed as a partnership, namely because you want the flow through ability. So a partnership, all of your losses, to the extent that you have basis, are able to be passed through to the partners of that entity. And so that's one of the reasons why we really like those. LLCs are simple, a little bit more simple than partnerships, and they're easy to do operating agreements. And so we typically set up your QOZB as an LLC taxed as a partnership. And then what happens then is that your profits flow through to the QOF and your losses also flow through to the QOF. Now, it's important that you understand that when you invest into a qualified opportunity fund, you start with zero basis. And that's going to limit your ability to be able to take losses as you start this up, unless you do something to increase your outside basis. We've got a video that explores that in depth. And so if you want to learn more about that, go to that video and you can learn about exactly how zero basis works and how you can use debt in order to be able to grab some outside basis so that you can take advantage of those losses. But if you want to be as simple as possible, once again, that's going to be an LLC taxed as a partnership at your QOZB level that's going to then pass up to your QOF. Once again, people ask me all the time, what about an S Corp at the QOZB level? Well, if your QOF is an LLC taxed as a partnership cannot own an S corporation. It actually has to be the individual taxpayer. And so that's a big deal. for us because it will literally obviate and won't be a legal structure. So do not create a QOF LLC, tax as a partnership, and then create an S Corp operating company. And so if you want to avail yourself of the S Corp structure, what we typically do is we set up your QOF as an LLC, tax as a partnership. We do the same thing as for the QOZB. We set that up as an LLC, tax as a partnership. And then we set up a separate S Corp over here as kind of a manager. And to the extent that you have income that's coming in is the reason why you want an S Corp in the first place, then we drag that income off by paying it in a management fee over to the S Corp. Now, let's talk about filing requirements for your QOZB. So you're going to want to file QOZB articles of organization with Tax Cut and Jobs Act language, if at all possible. You're going to want to have an operating agreement or bylaws that contain Opportunity Zone Tax Cut and Jobs Act language. We belt and suspenders it so that your organizing docs unequivocally are set up that this entity is specifically designed for investing in Opportunity Zone property through a QOZB compliance resolution. That sets out these 5 tests in detail and how you're going to comply with those 5 tests. And then you're going to need to get an EIN showing that it's taxed as a partnership. Then what we do and what our documents contain is a 31 or 62-month working capital safe harbor business plan for when you take your money from your QOF and you drop it down to your QOZB. So let's talk about states, and let's talk about where you're going to organize these QOFs and the QOZBs. So for your QOF, it's kind of agnostic. You could pretty much set it up wherever you want. And a lot of times people will set it up in the state that they live in. Now, there's 5 states that have exempted out of the Opportunity Zone legislation. And so if you live in one of those states, Massachusetts, California, North Carolina, and I can't believe that I can't remember the other ones off the top of my head, but I'll come back to it. If you live in those 5 states, more than likely, you're probably not going to want to set up your QOF in that state because you're probably going to want to move prior to you hitting that 10-year hold. And so for the folks in the North Carolina, I'm in North Carolina. Anytime I have a North Carolinian client, I'm like, listen, let's set this sucker up in South Carolina. So that way, if you move prior to your 10-year hold, South Carolina follows the federal tax rules and is going to allow you to take the step up in basis to fair market value. That's really significant. So once again, it doesn't really matter where you set up your QOF unless you live in one of those 5 states. So we'll typically set these up. We set up a lot in South Carolina because South Carolina doesn't have an annual report filing fee, and it's very difficult to find out who the actual beneficial owners are on their webpage. There's no public information that they disclose to anybody. Now, the information that we're going to talk about here in a second that you have to comply with when you file these through FinCEN is going to be just filed with FinCEN, and it's not going to be available to the public. Which is a great segue into this really big, important thing that you guys need to know about called the Corporate Transparency Act. It went into effect on January 1st, 2024, and it requires all companies filed after January 1st of 2024 to report personally identifiable information of beneficial owners of more than 25% to FinCEN. And that's for LLCs, corporations, trusts, etc. Any entity that does under $5 million in revenue is required to report this information. And it has to happen within 30 days of filing. And it's responsible on the company itself, and whoever files the actual entity is responsible for getting this information to FinCEN. Now, you can actually report this information ahead of time, get a number, and we've got a program and we've got a process to assist. If you've got any questions about FinCEN or about the Corporate Transparency Act, we're here to help, and we're here to assist you to make sure that you comply with this, because it's a big deal if you don't comply. It is up to 2 years in prison, $500 a day, up to a $10,000 fine if you fail to comply with this. And the really scary thing is that after you make the initial filing, you have to update that information with a new address information and that kind of thing within 30 days if anything changes. Wow. Now, I know that they did this in order to combat money laundering. That's one of the reasons why they put the teeth in it that they did. But what it does is it creates this unbelievable pain in the neck for folks like you and me that are just trying to do business. But it's there, and who knows whether they're going to be enforcing it. That's one of the reasons why you want professionals on your side who know what they're doing. So if somebody's talking to you about doing any kind of filing and they're not talking to you about Corporate Transparency Act, run, because this is a big deal. So once you file and once you figure out which state you're going to set up your qualified opportunity fund in, make sure that you file with FinCEN. Then you need to figure out what state you're going to set up your QOZB in. If you're going to do a deal in the state that you live in, that's an easy answer. Just set it up in the same state that you live in and that you're going to be doing your deal. Now, if you're one of the states that I talked about before, then you're going to probably want to set your QOF up in another state. And then it's just easier to set up the QOZB in the state where you're actually going to have property and where you're going to have the deal and the transaction that's going to happen. That's where you're going to want to set up the QOZB. So next, we're going to talk about how and the specifics of what you need inside of your documents. And we're going to jump into that right now. Okay, so we've talked about where you're going to choose to set up your qualified opportunity fund, like what state and how you're going to do that. You're going to file the articles with the state. You're going to make your filing with FinCEN. A question that I get all the time is, do I have to have an address for my qualified opportunity fund? Does it have to actually be inside of an opportunity zone? And the answer on your fund is easy. That's a no. You can set up that qualified opportunity fund anywhere you want. And you can use whatever registered agent address that you need, that kind of thing. And so that one's an easy one. So your fund setup is actually fairly easy. Your QOZB setup is a little bit more complicated. And what I typically tell people is that go ahead and set up your QOZB and get an address inside of an opportunity zone. Even if you were just going to lease an address with a WeWork space or some kind of, place where you can actually, get an office space. Now you need to have, it can't just be a PO box. It actually has to be physical space. And the reason is this, is that at your QOZB level, you have to have 70% of your tangible property owned or leased be qualified opportunity zone business property. And so of that, it can be owned or leased. That's the key. And so leased property is tangible property used in a trade or business acquired after December 31st, 2017 by purchase from an unrelated seller or by lease. And the reason why this is significant is that technically, while you're in your working capital safe harbor, you don't actually have to hit this 70% test. That's turned off. But in Form 8996, there is a place on the second page where you're going to disclose. This is Form 8996 is what you're going to use in order to certify your fund. And it's literally 4 pages. It's a fairly simple form, but there's nuances about how you fill that out. We've done a video about how to complete Form 8996. I'm going to be updating that video, so make sure that you check that one out as well. And make sure that while you're at it, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and, select to get notifications so that way you get notified when I do make updates to that. You get notified when we've got new stuff out there that's going to directly impact your OZ journey. But this is a significant piece of that. And this isn't in my original video about Form 8996, but this is page 3 of Form 8996. You have to indicate how much and where you have invested into your qualified opportunity zone business. And when you do, you have to identify the track, right? The census track where your qualified opportunity zone business is located. And I've got a lot of people that basically just leave this blank if they don't have any assets in a zone. But technically, I don't think that you can do that. And if you are investing and you don't have any property that's actually in an opportunity zone because you haven't bought any property, you haven't leased anything, then you've got some kind of property, right? Whether it's real and tangible or whether it's intangible. And you need to indicate that if it's outside of the zone by filling in all these nines. And and it's too small for me to count exactly how many nines that is, but it's a lot. But you put all those nines there, and then you put the EIN right here. And I think that you need to fill this out, even if you don't have actual property. And so then you put how much investment you put into the qualified opportunity zone business, and then what your owned property value is or your leased property value. A real easy way to have something in the form so that way it doesn't raise any questions about 99999 and any kind of non-opportunity zone property that you may have, is to go lease property in a zone. Go to a WeWork space and take down a lease where you've got a place, right? And then it's going to have a census tract. And so you put the census tract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever it is. And then you put the EIN of your QOZB, your investment value, you put $1 million into your QOZB. And then this is where it gets interesting, is that you get to put the net present value of all of those future lease payments right there. And I said I was going to wait till the end, but this is the secret tip, right? This is the secret tip of those investors who've been successful that aren't filling out forms that got a bunch of nines in them. They have engaged and they've gone and gotten a lease. Even if they don't have a property, they've gone and they've taken down a lease in an opportunity zone on some kind of flex workspace. Now, if you can't find one of those in your area, let us know. We've got them. And we've got it dialed in to where you can get a lease, and it's a 1-year lease or 2-year or 3 years with at least 5 extensions on it. And what that allows you to do is every extension that has a monetary amount associated with it just cranks this net present value up. So it allows you to have a substantial net present value number in this form from the get-go. Now, is that going to make or break your opportunity zone deal? No, but it could be the difference in presenting your initial Form 8996 to the IRS to having the Autobots that are going through these forms triggering something to say, oh, there's something not right here. Why do they have only stuff in a non-qualifying census tract? And so this is the way to force the form, is by having this lease in place, you can force the form to make it so that you actually have a qualified opportunity zone business address. And that's how you can go ahead and comply with that first test of your 70% of good assets inside of your 5 tests that you got at the qualified opportunity zone business level. So when you're forming these things and when you are, setting these up, that's just something to keep in mind. If you've got property or if you've got a lease that you've already got, then don't worry about it. If you don't and you need one, give us a call and we can help you to actually have and to come up with a lease. And if you want, we've got a package where we can sell you, a chair and a simple desk and maybe a computer screen or a computer place where you can plug in your computer to monitor it, and some cheesy artwork that we can put on the walls for you, and then take a picture and then you post it to your social media. Bam, we've opened our qualified opportunity zone office. And you've got a legit place inside of an opportunity zone that you can come to and that you are actively working and utilizing inside of a zone. Inside of the regs, they specifically say that a PO box is not sufficient, but if you have a lease on a dedicated space and then you actually own assets there, bam, you're good to go. And by the way, you're making a difference in that zone because, hey, this place that we've got, or whether it's a place that you've got, you're actively putting money and dollars into that zone to make a positive impact. So that's what you need to think about as you are setting up your qualified opportunity zone business and picking what state you're going to use to organize it, and then what you're going to use as the address. And there you have it, Trailblazers. That is a step-by-step process of how you create your qualified opportunity fund and your qualified opportunity zone business. Some factors and some decision making that you need to kind of keep in mind as you're figuring out what state you're going to do, what entity type you're going to select, and ultimately, some of the things that you need to keep in mind as you're doing it. Now, like, you could literally go out there and do this yourself right now. With the information that I just gave you, you could absolutely do this. You could pull the information out of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act language, drop that into your articles, into your operating agreement, and figure out the other documents. Or you could contact OZPros and you could have the pros do it for you. And we're happy to set these up. Like I said before, we've set up over 900 of them, and we have a process that's seamless. Hopefully it's relatively painless, and we walk you through it the entire time. As part of that package, you're going to get access to me on a weekly basis through OZ Ascent in order to ask whatever questions that you have. Or if you want to do it on your own and you want access to Ascent to be able to ask the same questions, you could certainly do that as well. That's all available at our website at OZPros.com, where you can either join Ascent, you can sign up so that we can complete your summit package, or if you're just trying to get this going and you're trying to figure out your next step about whether this makes sense for you or not, complete our OZ assessment, and you're going to get your free OZ roadmap by doing so. It takes less than 5 minutes, and you're going to instantly receive tailored next steps that are going to be suited specifically to your OZ needs and goals. Once again, all you got to do is go to ozpros.com/assessment or click the link in the video description below. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks for joining me today. Your dedication to learning and growth fuels the transformative power of opportunity zones. It is in your hands. It is in the hands of everybody out there to put this program to work, to continue to make a positive impact, and to save money on taxes. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep reaching for those peaks. But before starting your next adventure, hit that subscribe button and join our community of Opportunity Zone enthusiasts. This is your OZ Sherpa, Ashley Tison, out.